Hey everybody, welcome to this Cloud Lunch and Learn session. We'll give it a minute or two, guys, because we started 1 minute early. I panicked that I was chatting too much in the background and we may never go live.
So better early than late, I should say, you know?
Exactly. We've got people joining, so that's awesome. So we'll stay on this slide for a minute and then I'll hand over to you both. But if everyone could, please, if you're attending this session, hey Maurizio, please scan the QR code or go to the link that you see on screen that I'm also posting in the comments and chats on YouTube. Had to check what platform we're on there. Please register for the session. Not only do you get free learning materials from Microsoft related to the session, but it also helps show the love for the Cloud and Lunch and Learn team and lets Microsoft know, who sponsor us, that people are engaging and joining our sessions. So,
as you know, the more we can show to Microsoft that more people are joining, the more relevance are these sessions, and the more funding we can get from Microsoft and more resources.
Yes, the funding and resources that we need, guys, to bring you more learning opportunities. Hey, Mark. Okay, we're at a minute past now. We'll give it 1 more minute and then I will hand over to you guys to do your thing. So you're going to be taking us through an introduction to GitHub today. And then next Wednesday, we're going to do CI and CD pipelines within GitHub, right?
Yep.
Got that right? Awesome.
Yep, perfect.
Good. Okay, I am going to, in fact, I will also share. Interestingly enough, we've got a GitHub where we share all of our speakers' content. So we'll also share the link to that.
Amazing.
Isn't it amazing? Okay, guys, I'm going to hand over to you. So take it away and tell us all about GitHub, and I will jump out of the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Ishan, over to you.
Yep, thank you, Lisa. So we're going to talk about a bit about the GitHub and also the Git and what is the difference between Git and GitHub, because today people use these terms more or less interchangeably, but it is not if you're under if you're talking strictly and so on. So we try to walk you through what these two different things are, Git and GitHub. But due to our involvement with Microsoft, so we are going to concentrate on GitHub. We do have other platforms like Azure DevOps, which does similar things, but today is about GitHub. So my name is Ishan. I'm a cloud solution architect for data and AI at Microsoft, and I have my colleague here, John, who is also, go ahead, John.
Yeah, so hi everyone. As you can see, my name's John O'Brien, and I am also a cloud solutions architect with a slightly different leaning to Ishan. So Ishan's main focus would be on the data and AI workloads. Some would say the extremely cool parts of Azure, but I also have the pleasure though of dealing with the infrastructure side of things and the app side of things. So I think 50% of my time I spend speaking to customers across a variety of different enterprise level engagements, and we talk. Sometimes we talk about infrastructure and a heavy kind of topic, and then sometimes I'm talking to developers. So really, I've got the developer focused hat on today. I think both of us have the developer focused hat on today for GitHub, but it's not just about developers, and we'll talk about that later on as well.
Because even if I'm data, so we do use a lot of GitHub or Git or version controlling in data side of Microsoft.
Exactly.
And it's not just that like apps and infra and data and AI are two different things. We have to go hand in hand in everything. But let's start. So as I said, this is more about introduction to GitHub, but we also need to separate what Git and GitHub is. So Git is the technology, while GitHub is a platform. It's more like you have email or some email and Gmail. Gmail is a platform which provides you a service email, while email is just it can be used in any client. So it's similarly, GitHub is a platform which gives you access free, in this case, free access to save your code, do your project management, and have community engagement. While Git is the platform which enables the code management.
Excellent. Thanks, Ishan. So just to give some background and maybe some context and additional information to what Ishan was talking about. So as he mentioned, so we do have Git as a technology. So Git, it's in the title, GitHub. But what is Git, and a little bit more detail on its history. So Git it's a version control system. Strictly speaking, it's a subset of a type of software called Software Configuration Management System, quite a mouthful, SCMS, if you want to abbreviate. But effectively, what version control is attempting to do is it's attempting to allow teams, this is all about teams, people who are collaborating together. It's attempting to allow you as developers, as coders, to track changes to a collection of files and directories.
And not only track changes, but also be able to collaborate, like as a team, not having individual silos of individual developers.
100%. Yeah, exactly. So thanks for teaming me up there. So in terms of the focus areas where we want to look at, we're looking at tracking those changes. So I made a change to a configuration file. I made a change to some of my code base. I made even a directory structure change. I would like to track what's happening. Number one, who is doing that thing? And number two, what was that thing? And then also, we want to be able to work without conflict. And so this is the big thing, right? Particularly with distributed teams, the vast majority of coding houses, developers, who would have previously been working in big office blocks and been able to converse with each other, that's becoming increasingly a thing of the past. Distributed teams is a big thing, but obviously during COVID, it's a major.
Exactly. During COVID, like it's been very important to have distributed teams.
Yeah.
But like you cannot jam everybody in one apartment or something.
Of course, yeah. So not pleasant for anyone. So okay, so what it's trying to do, version control is trying to resolve the issue of working on several disparate people across different locations, working on the same files, working on the same structure, to develop a product. Open source has been doing this for decades. So we're tracking and we're ensuring that there's no conflict. Now, distributed version control, what is this? So distributed version control is essentially trying to rectify an issue with the earliest version control systems. So we had systems like Subversion, CVS, and Perforce that were centralized. Okay, so effectively what we had a arbiter of truth. And what we mean by that is we would have a single server that would maintain the history effectively in the metadata of all of the changes, all of the modifications, everything that was occurring on a group of, again, files and directories and everything that makes up a code base. Now, the issue with that is probably apparent very, very quickly is that you have this single point of failure. You have a single point of failure that could be, you could lose a server, or God forbid, you are working on a system that's on somebody's workstation. We've all seen it where we have someone who's installed a server-based system on a workstation and turns off their workstation at night, and then suddenly everybody's working files are corrupted or they're locked and you can't access those files. So distributed allows you to both work in an offline manner and an online manner. So it allows you to have the full history and state of what's actually occurring across these working directories, your code base. And if you lose the single server, well, you can still work offline. So it's a system. Git was originally developed in C by Linus Torvalds. It's quite an old system now at this stage, but quite often when people are thinking about version control systems, they're thinking about this technology. They're thinking about Git. And I believe you could find some of the quotes online from Linus basically saying that I'm trying to do the opposite of everything that something like a system like CVS, these are his words, not mine. I'm trying to develop Git to rectify the issues that we've had with things like CVS or Subversion, where we had this single point of failure. We also had somewhere where we had to check in code or check it out effectively. We didn't have great tracking. We also, you tried to rectify a multitude of issues with how these version control systems once upon a time operated. So that's the background. And just to tee up Ishan, who's going to give us a quick demonstration of working with Git. I'm just going to go through some important terms. Some of them I might have already mentioned as we were describing Git and its history. But just certain kind of key terms to watch out for and that are important when we're talking about Git and version control systems in general. So a repository is effectively the directory at top level of the working tree. Okay, and there's a lot in that. What we're effectively saying is probably the easiest way to think about it is I have a directory or multitude of directories. I have a directory structure. And I have effectively, in Git terminology, I've initialized this as my repository of my working files and directories. And initializing this directory or set of directories makes it effectively my repo. You'll hear repo more often.
Essentially, repo is where you save your code.
Effectively, yeah. So we have repo, effectively where we're saving our code. We have branch, where and this term is actually quite unique. It's one of the, well, not unique. It's one of the features that Git was built with in mind, and it's always touted as one of its main strengths. So a branch is effectively a series of what's called commits, which we're going to get to in a moment. But what that branch is effectively changes to my code base that I'm working on. So the easiest way to think about it is it's a feature set or an item of work, an action item, an issue, a problem, task, whatever you want to call it. It's something that I want to work with. I want effectively a point in time snapshot of my code, and I want to work on it. And then once I've made my changes and I'm happy with what I've done, I'm, as the verbiage says, I am committing to this code base being finished, this item being finished, whatever it is, not code base, but task, action, whatever you want to call it. So that's branch. Remote is a term that really comes into play, particularly when we're talking about something like GitHub, where we can define, I mentioned earlier on that we can work offline, we can work with distributed version control, we can work with local copies effectively of our code base. More often than not, what we're doing when we're committing quite often, and not just committing, sorry, we're pushing our code to a location where everybody can access that code. Again, the power of a distributed version control system. And what we're doing what remote is effectively doing is it's setting an origin point. Okay, quite often that origin point is a repo that's sitting in something like GitHub.
So think of the local version is your laptop, and then the origin or the remote version is on GitHub.
Exactly. So some of the commands, just to go through some of them very quickly before Ishan actually demonstrates what these commands mean. So we mentioned initialization, so init. And so effectively what we're doing there is we're saying that this is the repo I've got a directory. How does a directory be tracked by Git in terms of adding files and changing files and modifying things? I initialize that repo. It's effectively one of the first things that you will do. The status then is probably fairly obvious, but the status is to see, okay, how many, was there commits made recently? Have files changed within the structure of the directory? Do I need to add anything in? And that leads on to add. So the add command is kind of playing into a term called staging, so if I've got a working directory that I'm modifying the files in it, and I've been working on these files for quite a while, and then I introduce new files or a new directory structure or something like that. You have to add the new elements in, basically say to Git, I want you to start tracking these additional elements as well. And with the tracking, I want to be able to snapshot, which again leads on to commit, which I mentioned earlier on, which allows you to say, okay, I finished working with my code. I'm very happy with what I've changed. I now want to commit my changes and snapshot that point in time where I was happy with the code in that particular state. And that also gives you the capability then to review the logs, review commits that are made. Hopefully you're working with a very polite team who have lovely messages in there to tell you what they're actually doing, what they're working on. So you can review through the logs. And then we spoke very briefly about remote and origins and pushing and pulling, which Sean will go into detail a little bit later on when we're talking about GitHub Flow. Okay. And so with the terms out of the way, excuse me, it's just over to you, Sean. I'll stop sharing and you can give us a demo, if you please.
Yeah, I think it's Lisa who has to do that. Thank you, Lisa. So I will start by actually dive into GitHub. So in GitHub, you have things like you need to create a project essentially in order to do anything. So what I will do, I have logged into my GitHub. Up here, let me just do this. Yeah, should be better now. So if I click here on this plus icon, I can do a couple of actions. What we're interested in right now is create a new repository. I don't want to use any template. Let's just call it CLL GitHub. And let's just make it public, and let's call it Cloud Launch and Learn GitHub Intro. Or maybe just that. And I don't want to put any additional files from here. So I don't click anything, and then I just create repository. That's it. That's how it is to do it in GitHub. And here we can see a couple of commands on how GitHub tells you how you can do it. So let's go to the command prompt. So I have already, I am in my root where I used to usually work is projects, and then I create a new folder. But now I want to give my project a name. So I'm going to create a new folder called make dir GitHub, and I'm going to go to the folder. You can do all of these things with different clients like for GitHub Desktop and so on, or even Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio. But here I'm going to go do it more command line. So here we are, and firstly I'm going to do is just initialize a Git repository. So as John talked about, it's Git init, and that's it. Now we have a repository. A Git repository, not a GitHub, but Git. And here, I maybe want to create a new file. Let's call it cats.txt. And then let's edit this file. I'm just adding some extra text, close it, and then now if I do git status, I can see I have a file which is not committed yet. But if I go to, if I type git add cats.txt, it is going to add the whole thing. It will stage the file I want to check in. So this will be more. So if we do something like, again, git status, so we can see now this is a new file and Git is aware of it. And then if we do git commit, with a message, which is list of cats. Now we can see Git is telling us it has committed one file, or one file has changed with one insertion. The file name is cats.txt and with the comment list of. And I have worked in something called root master, and this is the so to say the ID for the master. And if we do git log, we can see we have one commit with the comment list of cats. It was done by me on 31st of March. And as you can see, it's the same hash, 3D90. And that's a simple way of doing Git. So you can do it locally. You don't really need to do anything to push it to a server or anything. But let's say we're doing something more complex. So if I go to Visual Studio and I create a new project, and I'm just going to scroll down somewhere, or actually there it is. I've already used it, so it's in my recent project template. So I'm just going to create a simple ASP.NET Core web application. It can be anything, doesn't need to be ASP.NET Core or anything. It can be any, like Python, Java, Go, Rust. People even check in Word documents, more sensitive Word documents and so on here. But today I chose to do this. So let's call it GitHub. Actually, let's give it a better title, my site. And I want it in as I remember, it's this path, and then I want to create it in this path. Next, .NET 5 is fine. I don't want to use HTTPS for now. I don't want to use any application. Everything looks fine. Great. And now Visual Studio will scaffold essentially an empty project for us with some minor details already in there. And let's change it to this. And if I click on the, as we call it, play button, we can see that it's a ASP.NET Core site with Bootstrap. There you go. So nothing special. It's a very simple site, basically one single page or 3 pages and this. So there we go. So what I'm going to do now is go back here and change my directory to the new I just created called my site. And here I'm going to do something called git init again to initialize it. And if I do git log, just to see what we already have, it's nothing because we haven't done anything yet. So if I do git status, we can see we have a lot more stuff here. So we have 2 folders and a file. So to make it easier, instead of doing file by file, Git has a built-in shortcut called git add, and you just do dot. And that's it. It checked in, or it staged all the files when you want to commit. So if I do git status again, we can see all the files in there that are staged to be committed. Again, we can do similar thing to commit as we did earlier, git commit. Let's just call it initial commit. And now if we do git log, we can see, yes, there's a log. And if we go back to now GitHub, we see how we do if we're creating a new, but we already have now something. So let's do this one. First thing I need to do is probably change my, So this line, the first line, git remote add origin, and this link, it actually tells the GitHub that I want to add an origin or add a remote site which is named origin, and it is located here. So if I copy this and paste, now if I do git remote tech-v for verbose, I can see that there are two endpoints now. One is for fetch, one is for push, and they both point for, in this case, to same URL. And because Git has decided to change the default name of the branch from master to main, we need to tell our local system that. So this is done by git branch big M main. And now if we write git branch, we can see we have a branch called main. And the star means that it is the one that is our current branch. So now we can actually do git push. We have to tell Git where to do it because it doesn't know which remote we want to use. We want to do it to origin, and we want to do it the main branch in origin. And now we can see that the local Git has uploaded the source code for this site to GitHub. And if we go here and do a refresh, we can see there's a lot of code here now. And if we do now git log, we can see we have one commit with initial commit as comment done by me on March 31st with this hash. And if we go here, if you see, it is the same hash, 38EF700. So that's how we do simple Git, creating a project, initializing, staging the files we want to commit it, and then push it. John?
Excellent. Thanks, Ashan. So let me share my screen again. Okay. So hopefully at this stage, for those who weren't aware, you now have a good sense of what Git is versus GitHub. So yeah, now what we're talking about now, as opposed to the underlying technology that's underpinning Git, we're talking about GitHub, which I guess is it's a fairly large topic, but we'll try and do it justice in terms of an introduction over the next couple of slides. So GitHub. So at the top, as you can see, the big marquee statement is the largest developer platform on Earth, which I think it would be an easy thing to argue that's true. GitHub is a cloud platform, I guess, first and foremost. It's using, as I said, it's using Git as its core technology. But what it's doing is it's layering a lot of services, a lot of feature sets on top of what already is a very robust version control system. And again, it's all focused on collaboration, the ability to work as teams, to work in a distributed manner, and to allow teams not to, I guess, how would you describe it? Not to cause problems for each other, first and foremost, which is probably the antithesis of what a team is supposed to do. And also to be able to track, report on, and sometimes even manage projects from inception to delivery effectively. So GitHub is it's a remote registry, I think, is probably the easiest way to say it, but it's also a web front end. So as you saw with Ashan, he can set GitHub as a remote origin. But what you have layered on top of that then is a number of different features and services. And we probably, we could do an entire couple of sessions on all the different feature sets within GitHub. I mean, honestly, we have a more complex session coming up next week if anybody's interested on CI/CD. But if there are future sessions on the extended features of GitHub that you would like to see, absolutely we can have a chat about that as well. So in terms of what GitHub is, just as a platform, I think what's very important to note for those who don't know is we have GitHub for free user accounts. So a lot of the things that we've talked about here, hosting a repo, doing things like raising issues, getting notifications on those issues, some of the built-in kind of basics you will get in the free accounts. There are enterprise grade versions of GitHub as well that are sold to quite often large enterprises. But the main focus area for GitHub for many years was the free open accounts, and what really took off then for GitHub was the open source. So the amount of open source projects, and as you can see there, some of the the most famous open source projects, some really heavy hitters there, like npm for package management, Docker, which effectively revolutionized the whole container space. Elasticsearch, you see Kubernetes icon in there as well. So there's every open source project under the sun you can think of, the real heavy hitters are hosted on GitHub.
For example, the source code for Linux is only on GitHub.
There you go. Yeah, that's a fairly important one, I think, we'd argue. And yeah, then we also have, as I mentioned, we've an enterprise grade product as well, and that's available. And there's a lot more feature sets around authentication, how the organization can be managed, tracking. There's more complex tool sets there, and a lot
for instance, say things like single sign-on. So you don't want to be like managing when you're onboarding and offboarding people to manage who can have access to your code, because we're in some case talking intellectual property.
100%, yeah, and things like MFA, for multi-factor authentication as well. So all of those things are built in. So we have enterprises, but then we also have, the innovators, the customers who are pushing the envelope. Homegrown one there is Stripe. We have Spotify. Look, they're easily recognizable to anybody on this call, I'm sure. And then we also have around that, because it is a cloud platform and quite similar to, I suppose, the way Azure operates as well, is there's an ecosystem built up over time. So there's a lot of products that will actually use GitHub, will integrate into GitHub, many of which are Microsoft, but there's a lot of very familiar names in there as well, and open source products that actually, or one-time open source products that actually utilize GitHub as well for a variety of different feature sets. So yeah, that's, I suppose, the takeaway here is that GitHub is using Git, but it is a massive platform with a variety of different services. But again, the takeaway is that you can use a free account. You can just start using it straight away. Anybody in the world can. So just a quick highlight of the things that I talked about layering on top of what Git does. So these aren't necessarily in any particular order or order of importance, but some of the things that you'll just kind of hit you straight away as you log into the GitHub web portal would be issues. So you can generate issues around projects that you're working on. I saw somebody in the chat is actually working on an open source project. You can raise issues. You can raise them for the attention of certain individuals within projects, and there's a whole discussion elements around resolving those issues, etc. So that's just one common way that people communicate using GitHub directly within.
Or if you are hosting an open source project, and let's say I'm consuming the project you have, and I want to get in touch with you or report a bug, I will use issues for that.
Yep, exactly. Yep, quite a
or feature requests, anything like.
Yep. I would like the product to do X, Y, and Z, please. That could be an issue, raised as an issue.
Or maybe help with documentation. I cannot do this. That will also be an issue, which then give you a community engagement. So everybody who is using the product might be able to help you. So it's not just about code, it's about the whole community.
Yeah, very good point, actually. So again, it's founded on the idea of collaboration. And open source is a huge element of GitHub. Its success, the hosting of those open source projects, and these are public. Anybody can comment on these. Now there are moderators that actually work on very large projects as well, but again, it is an open platform. Notifications. So this is something you can use as a developer. You want to be notified about certain particular areas, certain repos. It's kind of how you manage your workflows. Again, just something layered onto the platform. Releases is a way for, I guess, groups, companies to effectively package, maybe not exactly the right term, but a way of having various different release versions of their code available to anybody in the world. So you can actually consume releases from GitHub directly, and you can have a variety of different versions of software hosted effectively on the GitHub platform.
So it works not just as a release platform, but also as an archive. Like if you need to go back to a previous version, you can download. If the maintainer of the project have published like installation packages, you can always get to the older version, which you might need for some reason.
Good point. Yeah, if you want, you've got a legacy server operating system, something that one particular version of your software will work. You can go through the release management.
Or you're consuming one particular version in a legacy software you have, like one particular version of the library you're consuming as open source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's again another element that's layered in, and I suppose this is probably a teaser, would you say, Ishan, for the next session? So actions is it's really I suppose if we were to describe it in a nutshell, it's event driven, and it's how you automate tasks within your development lifecycle. So when you're doing things within, and Ishan's going to go through GitHub Flow now in a minute, but when you are, I suppose, doing pull requests into a repository, you can have events that happen. You can package up your applications, you can install artifacts, any number of scriptable tasks can actually occur as part of the kind of CI/CD pipelines. And this is where actions come into play. It's something we're going to do a full session on next week, I believe. So yeah, look, just another very important element, another layering of feature sets on top of Git.
GitHub Actions is fairly new.
That's true.
But it is very mature already.
Cool. Okay. So like I said, this slide we could have 100 items on this. These are just some kind of areas just to focus in on in terms of additionals that GitHub offers. Okay, GitHub Flow. And again, I'm going to tee up Ishan for a quick demonstration of what we're talking about here. But I'll speed it up a little bit, just to be conscious of time. So GitHub, what is GitHub Flow? Okay, so in a nutshell, excuse me. Some people might call it nutshell. So in the GitHub Flow, what we're talking about here is, I guess it's a workflow. It's how you can best utilize both the Git technology and GitHub in terms of best practice and how you should operate as a collaborator, as a code, as a developer, even documentation writers, whatever you're hosting on GitHub, how you collaborate and following a kind of a logical flow. That's been proven to work with multitudes of development teams. So first of all, we're kind of building on some of the terms we used earlier on. So there's this concept, I guess, if you think of the straight line as the master. I don't know if we mentioned that term, but the master is
or as GitHub prefer now main.
Master main. So let's say main. Keep on.
Yep.
Keep on the party line. So we have our main, branch, if you want to call it that, where I think the concept behind that is that anything there is production ready, production grade. You could deploy it tomorrow and not, cause major issues for whoever's utilizing the software. But the branch represents, I guess, features, ideas, even I suppose sometimes bug fixes if they're quite significant, but typically it would be new elements. It would be something that you want to work on or add into a project.
You don't want to disturb either a team working on it or the system which is stable.
Exactly, good point.
Going through the rigorous process.
Exactly. You don't want to suddenly, you're in crunch period and you're introducing new features and you're adding it into the master branch that, haven't been tested or regression tested as Ishan mentioned. So this is, you want to have a safe haven for working on your commits, your changes, and your modifications to that code base. We create a branch. We then start adding our commits into the branch as opposed to into the master. We're then going to do again, I'd say Ishan's going to go through this, but we're then going to do a pull request. And that's going to kick off. It's going to go to certain parties. There's a variety of different ways that this flow can be managed, but effectively what we're doing then is a code review. Okay, so I've made my commits. I'm happy with what I've done. I want to do a pull request into the master, but let's have a code review beforehand. Be safe as houses. Okay, we're happy with that, but again, probably another element would be let's do Q&A let's deploy into the Q&A environment. Let's do our testing, make sure it's not breaking any feature sets, etc. And then what we're going to do is bring it back in. We're going to tag it. We're going to merge it into our master branch, tag it, this feature set, has a particular label that says, okay, version X, Y, and Z. And we made these particular feature additions to the code base. And then we can kick off, again, going back to something like GitHub Actions, we can actually do a deployment directly into our production environments. So that is GitHub Flow in a nutshell. And I believe, Ishan, you have something you want to share?
Yep.
So let me stop. And stop my screen. Okay, over to you.
Lisa?
Hello.
Hey, can you share my screen?
Yes. Sorry, I was looking at the boxes there. I was like, what's going on? I think I meant to do something and I didn't see it.
Thank you. So here we're back to our new repository, which we just created. And as you can see now, there's an issue there. If you go in there, and we see there's one issue, and it says navbar needs to be dark. And if I open it, there's a description, navbar on the top of the page needs to have dark background. So we have a now feature request, essentially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the code in Visual Studio. But before I do that, I'm going to go I'm going to go to my command line, and as you see, I'm still in my site. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to type git checkout -b, and I'm going to give it my new branch a name. So in this case, I'm going to call it dark navbar. And because it's a feature, so let's call it feature dark navbar. And this naming convention is actually decided by your team, how you want to work. So in most cases, we just do FEAT for feature and then a descriptive name. Sometimes you add your own name, like your alias or something, in order to show that this is me who is working on, so we know what's going on, but let's just create a new branch. So now it's created. So what this means is that feature dash or slash dark navbar actually means that we actually created a new folder called feature now. So everything that's will be slash prefix will actually club together as in a more tree view. So now we have done that. Let's go back to Visual Studio if I can find it. And now that Visual Studio is updated, you can see down here, it actually says it's a new branch. The name of the branch I'm working on is there. So it's a good idea to make sure whenever you open your editor or IDE that you're in the right branch. So now, first thing I'm going to do is go in CSS file. At the bottom, I'm going to add a very specific selector. And with the property background color, and because we're using what is called boilerplate, so there are some variables. I'm just going to use that, which is called a dark. So it's already pre-built, so I know this is what we want. So now we already have our defined colors, and this is going to make it much easier for me. Save there, and then I'm going to go to layout. I'm not going to explain exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, because this is not a strictly a ASP.NET course. So let's just make changes, and I need to remove this. Actually, let's keep them. That's it, and then let's do check that it actually did something. And we can see the bar is with dark background, and it had got white logo. But we see that there are something which we cannot actually see unless we hover. Let's say that I forget it while I'm working on it. So if I close this, and if I go back to my command prompt, then I can do a git status, and I see I have changed all these files. So all I need to do to stage all these files is, as we did previously, git add dot. And if I do that again, git status, all these files are modified, and we know, and they are staged for check-in. And as we can see, which branch we are on here. So now again, we do commit. Sorry. With a message, which is called change doesn't really matter. Change name or background. It's always good to have a descriptive commit message so that we know what we did. And usually we try to keep one commit, as small commit as possible, so as little files touched as possible. There, and now I can do git push to push the changes. All right. Because we don't have any remote for actually this branch yet. This doesn't exist. So if we go here to GitHub and we go to code, we can see there's no branch, which is called, even if I click on view all branches, there's no branch that's called feature. .NET. This is number one. So what I will do, because Git knows what I want to do, so it helps me. So I can just copy this like this, and then there you go. And now we can see it pushed it. And if we go to code, there's no changes here. It's still one commit 38E, which is our initial commit. But if we drop down and go here, we have a new branch called feature.navbar. Let's go there. Git is smart now. It understands that if there's a new commit to another branch than your main branch, it prompts you to do a pull request. But we can see that we have a branch here now, and we have one commit, and then I can, or two commits now because I did one more. If we click on this, we can see the list of commits, and if I click on here, on this one, I think, I can see exactly what I changed. So it goes through all the files that are changed and shows the diff. If I go back and click on create pull request, change number background color, and I can do something called like #1. Git understands what I want to do is I want to connect issue with it. So I'm going to do that, and that's it. So I'm going to create a pull request. Now, if this would have been a real world scenario or real world situation, then you would have had maybe much more text of what you actually did, and maybe have some reviewers. Now, because I'm alone in this project for now, so I cannot have that. But we can see that it went through some checks, so it can be merged. And because we don't have any GitHub Actions, it will not go through a GitHub Action flow. This thing we will go through next time. And I prefer to do a reverse rebase and merge, so I'm going to do that. But before that, I will, let's say, I decide to check what's actually have been changed. So if I go to commit and navbar, I can see changes, and I see that if we expand it, you can see we still have that. So I, maybe as a senior developer, knows that because of this, there's going to be a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to conversation and write a comment, which is so I'm saying that the links in the number needs a contrasting color, so that we can actually see what's written there. So I'm going to publish my comment, and we can see that it's been published and it's here. And now, if let's say John would have done that, then I would have got a notification that John has done a comment. Then I will go back to my code, in this case here again, go back here and remove these, save it, and let's say git status. As now it's only one file, I haven't done the build, so it's not going to check in the binary files, which is a bad practice. I should have put a git ignore file in order to remove that, but now it's too late for me. But let's add this. I don't want to write the whole path. Okay, whatever, what's going on? I don't want to write the whole path of this file. So what I'm going to do is, again, git add dot. And if you go back and see, it added the file, only the file it needed to do. So I can do, again, git commit. There we go. What I did was I changed the navbar links color. And now I can do git push. And it is going to work this time because we already told GitHub, our local installation of Git, where to push and which branch it is mapping. So we can see it is mapping from feature.navbar to feature.navbar and so on. And now if I go back, we can see that GitHub has already understood that there are now two commits. And if I go here and look at the, sorry, latest commit, and I can say, okay, now it's going to work. So when I go back to the conversation, and then I can just do rebase and merge because that's what I prefer. It has to do with how clean your tree is and so on. And then I just click on it, confirm. And now we can see that it has merged into main branch, and I can actually delete the branch. I don't need it because it's done. And delete. And if I go back and drop down, we only have one branch now, default branch. Go back. And if I browse the page to where the code is, which is pages, a share layout, I can see that the changes I made, which are here, is navbar dark, and I remove the text link dark here. They've already been committed to the main branch. And from here, I can decide, because this is now maybe ready to production, we might decide to do a tag and so on, but that's a bit more advanced topic. So, John, did I miss anything?
No, I think we're golden. Just conscious of time, Shan. So we've about 4 minutes left.
Yep.
So I think, let me just share again. If I know people have been asking, so we kind of made an effort to answer questions in the chat, but I suppose with the limited amount of time we have left, if anyone has anything else they'd like to raise, even if we can't answer now, again, we do have another session coming up next week, and we could potentially take the questions away and answer them next week, or if they're simple, we can do it now. But other than that, I think we're happy. If we're happy with,
or if you
what
want, you can send them on my Twitter, which is this, or LinkedIn, same.
Awesome, guys. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for joining in. And please do remember to register for the free Microsoft learning materials related to this session. I will make sure that I actually give you the correct link, so bear with me. It's this one. We've also got a feedback form, so if you want to drop feedback on the session, that would be awesome. And I'm going to put that here. I'm just going to basically fire you a bunch of links, open them all up, and enter them all.
Link storm.
Yeah. And then, and I'll get this up here as well. And then we'll be back next week, same time, to go into more GitHub, CI and CD pipelines.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks. Oh, sorry, John, I've just seen an answer to your one of the questions we had in the chat. So I'm just going to quickly post it. It was to Evo. It was to Evo about the merge. So Evo, if you're still EvoFox.com, if you're still with us, check that out. And yeah, we're all good. Okay, guys, see you back next week.
Yep.
Bye-bye now.
See you
later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.